comments. I think they're spot on because
Yeah,
Retta and I did go through the first
doing it
MOU
right
and
is-
we did put some of those things in there that was not, you know.
Doing it right is probably more important than
Sure.
doing it for the money.
Yeah. And I don't think the timeline can stretch to that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, one more, and then we're gonna move on.
Okay, I just want to ask a question, and that is, I want to know if this, Iona McCain, I want to know if this integrated regional water management plan, it does monitoring of new water wells. I was wondering, is this the same agency that was basically going to do the monitoring of the water wells for the estate, for the Estelle properties that exported water out of Surprise Valley over to Washoe County? Did anybody do any monitoring on
I don't
that?
think it's a different thing, but I'll let Maury speak to that.
No, this is not the same thing.
But there was an agency that was going to do the monitoring of
Like-
the water.
A variation on a thing, like what we were talking about, and actually it's a
Thank you.
really good illustration because it's not as cloudy as this IRWM process, but you will recall some years ago, it basically DWR has said if you don't implement your own groundwater management, we're going to do it. And so that threat prompted us to, as you've discussed, retain control of the monitoring, even though it's been done by them forever. That hasn't happened yet, and there's a program, and Galen's an expert in this, but the CASGEM program is basically the program that would be utilized for us to continue to do our own monitoring instead of the state. If the state ever relinquishes control, which is unclear. So even though we said we want to be that entity, they have still not decided to do that, and so they continue to monitor. However, we're shadowing them now so that we know where they're going and et cetera. So that's a different process. No, we haven't monitored anything with the exportation project other than the conditions that went with it that were a governor on how much water could be coming out of the well. And that is a temporary permit that I think expires this June or July.
End of the water year.
End of the water year. So a different thing. So, but a lot of the genesis of these things comes from the state. You do it or we'll do it, and it puts us in a position that we want to guard. And as Jack said, if we don't do it, we run the risk at some point, and who knows when that may be. I mean, if we didn't do any water monitoring and they stopped and they said we're going to do it, it could be decades, who knows. But then we have lost everything, and we don't have any precedent to show that we were ever doing it or ever had any protocols or policies that would preempt them from changing what we're already doing. So that's, and with the IRWM, it's much less clear. That was a brighter line of why we want to do it. With this program, I agree with Aaron. It has so many tentacles and so many different objectives that it's much harder to understand how it's going to play out in the future for local control.
Thank you. Okay.
Wouldn't this have anything to do with the spalling water?
No, I don't believe so. Maury? Is that?
The lack of water in Eagle Lake?
Yeah, if you're gonna put all the water underground in tanks, what the heck good's the water on top of the ground then? Makes no sense to me.
I think Biley wants to know if it has anything to do with the 3,000 gallon storage tank in Spalding.
Oh,
I
no,
don't think so, no.
not to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Violet. Okay, as I see it, if we want to continue and work on the path to take James Curtis' recommendation and improve on the MOU, we would make a motion to support number 2, or if we want to sign it as is, that would be number 3. If we want to do nothing, then we don't make a motion to do anything.
Which is not on your report.
Okay, so that's what's before us, so what's a pleasure?
Well, Mr. Chairman, the existing agreement, which is in the packet, basically has a non-binding kind of an organizational structure and setup. And with the new proposal binding system. So I think, obviously there's an interest to take it to a different level. The document before us, I think, is a lot of defects, as pointed out by Mr. Curtis. I have no objection to the staff working with all the parties and see if they can come up with a better widget. If they can't, I think doing nothing, which is maintaining the existing MOU in a non-binding fashion, is where we're at. And we're not going to change that until such a time as we come up with something that is an improved model. And the other four parties obviously bought into this new approach, and I'm not interested in being a part of that. So, I'm not objectionable to number 2 and letting staff, maybe try to come up with something as an improvement, following the thoughts and ideas that Mr. Curtis puts forth. But until such a time, doing nothing would be fine with me.
So is that a roundabout motion? to support number two?
Yeah, I would say I'd be willing to make a motion that we follow number 2 and direct staff to work with the other parties to, come up with some revised language for the MOU and bring it back for consideration. And obviously the others have already acted, so we would be the first one that would have to act. So until we put our stamp on a final document, then that would have to go back to those other 4 parties to rescind their support of the action they took and accept the new version that we would be putting forth as maybe representing from the county.
That's been moved, we have a second.
I'll second that with the urging of staff to expedite the new document. So we don't,
Yeah, I accept that as part of it. I think
Yeah.
obviously because of
Yeah.
the grant potential out there, I don't want to see us aggravate that.
No,
But if
not
we
at all.
can't put it together, then the existing MOU is still in place. They can talk, but there's no,
yeah, but if we can expedite that document to get it to the other parties, that would be Retta. That would be
No.
Retta.
I think we're ready.
Okay, thank you. That's been moved and seconded, and I think we'll forego any further discussion. We pay Richard far too much money to sit out there in the hall, talk about farming with
he's
Bob.
he's probably falling asleep.
So, okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
You didn't have that, you're right.
How's the reference?
She needs to take her camera out there real quietly and peek around the whole deal.
So, okay, the chair votes aye. So the motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Aaron.
You got that? Yes. I didn't know if you heard.
Okay, let's take up item I1.
Should we bring you guys back in?
Well, it looks like we lost Richard.
Thanks for the water.
Had to wake Richard up from his nap.
I'm rested.
I want you to know, the chairman was trying to entice Ms. Hodge to take her camera and go out and sneak around the corner and
Catch you asleep.
Yeah, catch you asleep.
All right, Richard. Okay, we're gonna move on. We're gonna take up item I1, which is just the information, it's
So,
correspondence.
where are these guys at? Is this Westwood or who are they providing cable service to? They're not in Susanville, I don't think.
I think it is
Susanville
West.
Yeah, I think you're right, I think it
Is it Westwood?
Is there any comment on this item before we move on? I1, cable TV franchise administrator. Okay, thank you for that. Richard, did that cover everything before we go back into the closed session?
Capital improvement plan
right.
H3.
Oh, sorry, there's no documentation for that.
No, and if you want to take up each 3?
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
so the board asked that we place this item on the agenda on the first meeting of each month. And so that it's a placeholder here to discuss the capital improvement plan. We are continuing to gather all the documentation from the past to go over. I don't have it in here, from years gone by, which some of it is actually just simply included in the budget. It's not really a formal plan. It's just budgetary appropriations for various projects year after year after year. And so that it's on there for discussion. The board elected, last time we discussed this issue, to not adopt the plan that was presented by Mr. Nichols and to continue to work on it, so that's what we're doing.
And first, I'll go to the public just now, I just want to have a board discussion, and we'll take public comment.
Okay.
I mean, personally, I know you've been wearing two hats, and it's all new here, but I mean, I think sooner than, rather later, we really need, what I envisioned was an afternoon study session on the first board meeting of each month, where we have some comprehensive, a meaningful discussion and could address all these things. Because the community has brought up some valid points, why are we spending money on this and we don't address this, and it is very valid.
Okay.
Extremely valid.
Well, now that Mr. Egan is permanent, his contract yesterday, and he spoke up, maybe for starting in April, that could be the afternoon study session, and we could, that was what the board kind of.
And we could do it, we could do it earlier.
No, I would say the first meeting in April would be,
Yeah, and Richard, I think, just a list of all the buildings, I know it's gonna take some time to put it
well,
together.
that's what's
Yeah.
part of what Public Works has had for the basis of their budgetary thing. I mean, that's been inherent part of the budget process is a list of all of our assets and stuff. Now we have the other committee that's just been, you fill the public members on, that will be a component that will be part of, looking at the long range plans of where we're at, so.
Before I resigned as chairman of the Capital Improvements Committee a couple of years ago, we've begun a geographic tool that allows us to catalog all the buildings, and that's still there. We just need to test it out.
And I think the new proposed project that we're discussing, being the new boardroom deals, needs to be
Part of that.
And looked at it with all of the other buildings.
Okay. Because we have an item today at one to
Right.
discuss the courthouse, the boardroom
Yeah.
relocation. And if we're moving kind of fast on that, and if we want to hold that off and deal with it in the context of the bigger picture, we can do that. But I just need to know.
I don't think, Mr. Chairman, we want to slow that down.
I don't want to slow down the discussions on it. I think that we should put just as much emphasis on all the other county buildings as we are that one.
Okay.
And really make some decisions that the community, could support. It seems to me like, we're ignoring everything else, focusing on this, which I'm happy to focus on, but I also want to look at the whole picture.
I think all of it should be, sooner rather than later is preferred. But, my experience is that when now you get this discussion going and you have stuff in the hopper. We've got two projects that we're looking at being done at the Veterans Memorial Hall that we've been in the hopper for umpteen years that are, ready to move forward. And if you take projects that you're working on and all of a sudden put a freeze on them while you're now trying to gather information, you don't serve the purpose at all.
Okay, thanks. So we're gonna then first meeting of
The
April.
first, yeah, and also, the first meeting in April, we'd also discussed predominantly with Supervisor Hammond, a study session regarding, kind of starting going department by department, but beginning with community development planning. We could do both of those on the same day, if we want to dedicate the whole afternoon.
Let's do it.
Do we have a pool meeting, Jim, on the first Tuesday of the month?
No, the first Tuesday is not a meeting, and we have a pool meeting that day, yes, but what you're talking about is April 8th, which is the first meeting
Yes.
of the board in that month, and that would be a pool meeting.
No, that's at 3 o'clock, yeah.
No, the pool meeting would be April 1st and 5th.
No,
Yeah, I'm not sure about it.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, great,
Well-
let's shoot for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll do.
If there is gonna be something that the board members have to be at 3, maybe we move one of those to the last meeting
Okay.
in March.
Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, yeah. Okay, thank you. Any public, aye.
Hi, Jean Hodge. I've been researching this capital improvement stuff, and that first paper I brought in was 30 pages. It's kind of full of stuff. But I found one that's basic. It's 6 pages, and it's just a wonderful document. It explains everything. I brought some for you guys. So this is like it in a nutshell, simplified on a smaller scale. So I think this could be really a good, helpful thing for us.
Thank you, Jean.
Mhm.
While you have the floor, is there anything in particular you want to point out on this, or just for our review?
Well, it pretty much, defines what our purpose is. It gives you all the tools to boil it down to the basics, and it just is like a cookbook. It's like a recipe. How to prioritize your projects and how to put it all together with the budget so that it all makes sense. And it does talk about that there's a certain amount of flexibility in there so that if events change and things happen, but it does address existing properties and it leaves space open to, think about maybe some buildings need to be bulldozed and offices consolidated and things done that way, because if we're constantly retrofitting and repaving and repainting and really, maybe you have something that needs to be cut.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could, I appreciate, Gene, I appreciate the fact you bring all these documents forward. They're good tools to use to review what we have and what we've been doing in the past. And I think it's important though to state that, just the cursory review and based on your presentation, it sounds very similar to what Public Works staff has done all along. And I think we have to recognize that, that there is not a vacuum, that nothing has ever happened. And now all of a sudden we're talking about making something happen. Now, what we need to do is take the knowledge that a few folks have taken an interest in, because that's part of their job. And I'm speaking specifically of the Public Works folks. And usually the board interacts with them at budget time, so when the budgetary decisions are being made and the priorities, we're interacting. And that is not something that's done on a wide circle. And I think really what you're aspiring for is we need to open up that discussion to a wider circle. And I think that is really significant and important. And obviously this could give us a tool to evaluate what has been done in the past. And I think a lot of it, you're going to find is something that has consistently, it follows something very similar to this. The last document you brought in was a great document. I enjoyed reading it and doing some thinking about it. It was designed for a town hall form of government, which New England uses, which is really a direct democracy, where everybody in town gets together and they, once a year, and they kind of basically do what we do in a delegated fashion. And that tool is designed, how do you get the public at large to tune into what some of those details are. And then once they have their town meeting and they set their priorities and, and then they pick people, your job is to follow through and get this done and so forth. And then the following year they meet to see how people do that. All those practices are really well and good, and it's a way of trying to get the public more involved. But in the end result, is that not a lot of people, you're energized, we have a few folks here, we got a lot of people who live in the county, and I guarantee you, most of them tell me, they go, you mean you want me to come to a meeting and sit and be involved? And that's why we elect you, that's why we choose the people we do, and why those people that are elected go out and hire the people that we have in the various departments to participate. But I think what we need to do is really take what has been done and make sure that that becomes maybe wider known and wider appreciated. And I think a tool like this helps us do that, and I think that's a great thing to sponsor and to pursue and whatever. But we're going to find out that a lot of what maybe they're saying we should do in the format and so forth is very similar to what has been done by staff, because that's their job, and the board from time to time checking in with them and saying, okay, we want this done versus that, here's the money for this, and we need to save money because down the road in 5 or 10 years we're going to have to deal with this. That's all part of the planning you know, and prioritizing of our capital needs. And that's gonna be an ongoing thing, whether we as a community engage or as a board engages. But I think more of what we can do to engage in that process can hopefully lead to better decisions overall. I mean, there's always room for improvement. But I wanna make sure that we don't, you know, buy into the idea that there's this vacuum exists and nothing has been done. There's a lot of work that has been done, and maybe the format isn't what you may think it should be, or somebody else thinks it should be, or I think it should be, but that work nonetheless is still there.
I see it, thank you very much. I see a $5.6 million deferred maintenance list, which is very, very helpful. I see a wish list that Mr. Nichols put together, which is also very helpful. But what I don't see is a comprehensive document called a capital improvement plan that melds all these ideas together. And I realize he's been working several years and very diligently on pieces of the puzzle. And I think what the
We all
people
have
want, they would like to have more participation in your meetings, but a lot of people are work during the day. So maybe we can also incorporate meetings in the evenings like the city council does, and put these pieces together, and I know he's working hard on it. And I just think that, and I appreciate what you're saying, that we could also have a more comprehensive list of priorities and meld them with the budget, so we know where the funding is, and
And I think
a little more transparency.
And it needs to be in front of us monthly, we need to look at it and go, it's like any task, you know, you have, if you only look at it every 8
Well,
months.
there's no doubt in my mind, everybody will recognize, I love dealing with budgets. I love dealing with priorities and budgets, and capital improvement prioritizing is a big part of that. So, hey, I could do it every week if you want. I mean, I think doing it once a month would be great.
Sounds like you're campaigning.
No, I'm not tempted.
Thank you.
I don't see how I like doing budgets as a campaign thing.
Thank you, thank
You guys are bad.
you. I own it, yeah.
Yeah, they're jumping down here at the photo stick. I am McCain. First I want to thank Richard for bringing up the issue that he worked on the capital improvement plan a couple of years ago, and was working on it. And of course, we all know that the Department of Public Works has their infrastructure, the roads or bridges and that sort of thing. But I think the real issue too, also about the capital improvement plan that is important, is that so often we in the district feel like we're left out of some of the things that could be improved, where there's a Veterans Hall, like a big beautiful one here in Susanville. We'd like to have something better than the cardboard box that we have down there. It's things like that that have people concerned about the priorities of where you spend the money. My gosh, I'd like to have a Cadillac instead of my little Rolex Ford, you know, but I have to be realistic. I can't go out and redo the building over here for the chambers. I can't go out and get a swimming pool. We have to be realistic. There are certain benefits that are abundant that certain districts receive, and other districts receive zero. And I think that's what the reason that people have jumped on the capital improvement plan. Some of us feel absolutely left out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm in full support of that monthly deal to address it and have a meaningful discussion. I think that'll be good for all of us and the public that can make it. And I know there's a lot of public interested, not everybody can make it, but at least it'll be, you know, on video there. All the-
Mr. Chairman,
all the discussion, so, yeah.
if I could comment on the night meetings and,
Yeah.
and you know, the board historically over the years, we've traveled to different parts of the county and had meetings. I know Aaron is working to arrange for a bus trip and a meeting up to North County, which I'm excited about and love to do. You know, staff gets a little apprehensive about it because, you know, they have lives and you know, we talk about, we can move our meetings to the evenings. Okay, but, you know, we start at 9 in the morning, we go to 3 in the afternoon, we even can sometimes go as late as 5. And you're not gonna do that in the evening. An evening meeting, if it starts at 6 or 7, at best, you're going to be able to have that meeting go till 9 o'clock. So if you're gonna do evening meeting versus a day meeting, to take care of all the business, you're gonna have 4 or 5 nights in a row to get done what is done during the day. And that doesn't say that we can't take, an item like capital improvements or some specific topic that, there may be wider interest, and we have done that. We've held evening sessions, a workshop, and we take care of routine business during the day, and then we come back and have an evening session to take in a particular topic. But, the idea of the fact that we could just take our meeting like the city council does, I mean, their last 2 or 3 agendas maybe lasted, 15 minutes to 30 to 45 minutes. It's a relatively, routine in nature, and not a lot of people come and attend those particular meetings. Our agendas are have a lot more meaty type issues that sometimes the discussions take on, huge proportions. But the idea, you can take a meeting of the Board of Supervisors and compress it into an evening session. Yeah, I'm a night owl. And I know what the chairman is, so let's start the meeting at 6 or 7, and if we go to 1 or 2 in the morning, that suits me just fine. But I guarantee you, there'd be a lot of people complaining if that was become the routine type thing. So I just, point that out for those who like to use that to try to, beat up on the board for the fact that we meet during the day. We meet during the day by necessity because of the length of our meeting and engaging the staff. They work 8 hours, they're here in the room. If you expect them to come back and work another 8-hour shift that evening, to get the business done, I think you're going to find a lot of other problems that will crop up. Yeah, it might satisfy a few folks who want to be here and be a part of it. I would love to see them be involved, and yeah, let's have some evening sessions on targeted issues, but to do the whole business of the board in an evening, I can tell you right now, probably isn't practical.
That's a good point. Eric?
Yeah, Richard, when we go do this on the first meeting, or if you want to have some hard copies or a PowerPoint so that everybody can see the same information, I think that would be,
Okay.
that would be important.
A good note.
I'd also like to request, Richard, if this document Gene submitted, that could just be part of that agenda item as information. And that way it could go up on the website,
Sure.
and be on there for everybody to see. It's kind of hard, so it's.
Yeah, this one here in that previous document.
Glancing at it, looks
Yes.
this looks like a really good outline.
Yeah.
The other one is pretty voluminous. I think this is more of a basic.
But it's set for a different type of a form of government. But yeah, I think it's good information, and it gives, there's bits and pieces, and they're great ideas that we should, look at incorporating, so.
I have no doubt if we focus our energies and if we wanted to pick up the ball where we last left it and give it the attention that it really does deserve, we could, it's not gonna happen in 2 months, but
I guarantee you,
over a short time.
I guarantee you, one thing it will do, it will strengthen your budget process.
Yeah.
And that would be a plus.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Will do.
I think we can move off this, and we're gonna stand
Okay,
recess.
you need to do information for the board number 7?
I just have one item. We have tentatively, or actually formally scheduled the April 22nd meeting in Big Valley. We've secured the buses, and subject to confirmation, we'll be meeting in the Veterans Hall. And I think
What day is it?
April 22nd. So just so.
Richard, I got to clean it for lunch. I was talking to Clinton, and he runs the senior luncheon thing, and it might be possible to coordinate with him, and he can show
Okay.
things for everybody.
His name's Clinton.
Or we can round table, or we can go to the house.
Red Barn.
Well, the kids know where they're at.
So anyway, just to mark your calendars, we'll have more information.
And that meeting, the whole meeting will be held in Big Valley.
Yes, and we're debating, Supervisor Alba would like to take a tour of Little Valley, so we're debating how to properly agendize that, if it's indeed gonna be a meeting, if we're all on the bus, if it's a local meeting, or what we legally need to do to accommodate that. Or if we just meet there, adjourn and meet there.
Cause that tour of Little Valley, that's the crux of going up to Big Valley, is that tour of Little Valley. Okay.
We'll figure it out.
Alrighty, I think we need to recess to reconvene at 1 o'clock. Alright.
I'm just advising the chair.